Hi there. If the following free content proves to be useful to you, please consider liking the video, subscribing, and checking out the pinned comment down below for more options to support my efforts. Thank you for watching, and please enjoy the video.
This was a beautiful question. It's a beautiful question because here's a person who's asking me about my general approach to something, and I love these questions because they're really important. So I'll start by reading the question. This is going to be a lengthy diatribe, so I apologize. I'm not going to be looking at the comments for a little bit for this one because it's a really great question. All right, so our friend Juan Romo asks, do you normally have a good idea? This was taken from YouTube comments on one of my videos. Do you normally have a good idea of all the features you want to implement in an app, or do you just tack features on as the ideas start coming to you? The reason I ask is because I'm currently wanting to make my own Android app, but I'm not sure if it's better to create a semi-exhaustive list of all the features I want before I begin, or just start coding, add features as the ideas come and give her. So this is a question that I spent a lot of time answering myself, because it's a very important question. How do you design an app is basically the question. How do you start if you're a beginner? Because maybe you've got an idea, like you've got an idea in your head. You want to build a note-taking app. You want to build a workout log. You want to build a video chat app, whatever. But you don't know where to start because it's complicated. Here is what I do right now. Before I get into that, there's at least one, there might be two, really key points that I want to mention. This is the process that I use. And the reason why I use this specific process is it works well with how my mind works. I think super visually. I can visualize software architecture and things talking to each other, and that might sound really cool. It has benefits and disadvantages because if I don't have a picture, I can't really get started. So here is my suggestion and my approach. But when I say this, even as a beginner, the main thing is follow your instincts. Figure out what works for you, because the ideal process for you might be different than the ideal process for me. I'm super visual, three-dimensional, spatial in my head. So this is how I do it. So the question was, do I create a list? What do I do? Let's take an example. Let's say I want to build a workout log. I'm kind of cheating because I've already built one before, but let's say I want to build a workout log for the first time ever, and I don't know what to do. And this is a very real reference experience for me because the first shitty app I ever built was a workout log. And I ran into this same problem. What do I do? So here is my current process. So you're right. The first thing I do, I'm building a workout log. I'm going to think of a rough list of features. My personal suggestion to you is to make these features very compact and to follow the single responsibility principle. Look that up. A thing I did wrong before is I had features of the app which did a whole bunch of things in one feature. Don't do that as a beginner. That's really bad. It makes problems for you. It makes crashes. Single responsibility. So I'll divide a workout log and I'll kind of jot down a list. I don't have a list with me, but I do have some other things I can share with you. So I'll make a list. So I'll say, what would a workout log need? Well, it'll need a screen or a feature or an activity. And I'm really speaking of the same, these are all related, one screen, one activity, one feature, all the same concept, one use case even. Not use case in the context of clean architecture, use case in a different context. And I'll make a list of these, a rough list. That's the first step. The second step is I do sketches. And I'll show you some sketches. So once I've got my rough list of features, I'm going to make sketches for each feature. And these sketches achieve several things for me. Number one, let me just show you, I'll show you one and then I'll kind of talk about it. So this is, what am I showing you here? These are sketches I will be using soon to build an app I haven't built yet. So that's why this is a great example, is you're asking me for my process and I am showing you literally something that I'm doing and how I'm applying this process. So for each feature, what I like to do is I will take one page. I'm not an artist, but the more I practice, the better I kind of get at sketching these things. I'll just hold this up in front of the camera for a little bit. And the goal of these sketches is several things. I want to have a rough idea. The first thing, I need to have a picture of the UI. If I can't slowly build up a user interface, I need to visualize the whole thing. So that's why I do these, the visuals. So this is the first step, sketch it. Just sketch it. Now, this is a complicated feature, a complicated activity. So knowing that, I've gone into quite a bit of detail. I've even gone so far as to do some animation kind of stuff. This other part, create thought, all this feature does is it creates, thought basically is a note. It's kind of basically a note-taking app, but I'm adding an artistic flair to it. But all it does is creates a new note. So obviously it's super barren. There's barely any information because the feature is super simple. I don't need to make a bunch of detail here. In a complex feature, I do. So for each feature, I will make a sketch page which is as complicated, has as much detail as I think it needs. Also, these things tell me other things. Because I've built a lot of apps, I know that this thing's going to need to talk to a database. That's like just experience. I just know that this app will need a database. So what I've done is I've got this little thing here called dependencies, and I've said thought storage. So I'm basically making a note here. I want a part of my data layer, my data stuff, my repositories, my database, all that crap. It's going to need, this feature will depend on that thing. If I feel like it, if I think the situation calls for it, I will also start jotting down methods for the feature. Just names. So I've got this list of methods here. And this is not exhaustive. I don't sit down and aim to write out every method and everything. Don't do that. That's kind of a waterfall approach. Don't do waterfall, do agile. Write down as much information as you think you need at the time. Be prepared to change it. Be prepared to change any part of this, because requirements will change. I also have a variable. I know that this feature is going to need a list. All this says is list of thoughts. So I know it's going to need a list of thoughts. So to kind of wrap the question up, how would I design a new app, and how do I go about thinking what features, what parts of the app I'm going to write? Do I do it like as I go? I do not do it as I go. I start with a basic, non-exhaustive list of features, and the thing is, as you build more and more apps, that process will become a lot quicker. This didn't take me long at all. This took like it took me a while to draw the things, but to actually figure out these different features of this app probably took me 2 hours, because I've spent a ton of time doing it. You'll get faster as you do it. So create a rough list of features, and it should be centered around things the app does. So this thing does one thing, mostly. It does two things, basically. It displays a list of reminders. No, it does three things, sorry. It displays a list of reminders. It allows you to delete them, and it allows you to launch an activity to start a new, to create a new thought or a new note or whatever. I totally lost my train of thought there, so we'll just move on. So create a non-exhaustive list of primary kind of use cases. Single responsibility, I recommend for beginners and advanced people. And then the next step number 2, is to create sketches for each of this non-exhaustive list. Build those sketches with as much detail as you think you need. And that'll come down to you and what, build your own process, because it's going to be different for different people. I think differently than a lot of people. Like, I literally think in pictures and 3D stuff. So it's different for me in that regard, possibly. And then I just have a couple notes. These are just little notes which I've already mentioned. But yeah, so the first note, this process will differ based on you and the way your brain works and your goals. Secondly, expect to change. Expect this stuff to change. If you expect it to change and you plan for change, you will be more agile. If you've heard the term agile software development, in a nutshell, that's what it is. Change based on your requirements. Like, for example, maybe it turns out that this won't be the case. I'm just saying hypothetically, maybe it would turn out that I can't actually have this feature delete items for some reason, some framework issue, doesn't matter. Those are the kinds of things that you will run into. You'll run into things where you have to change what you're doing, and that you should expect to do that, especially as a beginner. And the last point, and this is an important one. Once you've got your list of features and you've got your sketches and you're ready to start to jump into Android Studio or Eclipse if you live in a cave. No, I'm just kidding. Once that's ready, my suggestion is to start with primary features first. So I will be starting with the complicated one. I know I'm not going to have any difficulty building a little activity that just has a text box and a label and 2 buttons up top. That's not going to have any complexity for me. This thing is slightly more complex. This is thought detail or just thought. Notice how I've misspelled it because I'm a fucking goof. and pardon my language. And this one's a little more complicated, but this is the most important thing. So I recommend, this isn't a hard rule, but I like to start with the complicated stuff first. And the reason why is for proof of concept. Once you have this thing showing up in your app, it's a good feeling. It will give you motivation to be like, okay, I've got the most difficult thing out of the way. Now it's going to be smoother sailing for the rest of it. And that's basically that. So that is my answer. I will be going into way more detail about my process when I build this app.